Hi, I'm Natalie Jill, fat loss expert turned high performance coach. When odds are stacked against us, how do we shift and create everything from nothing? How do we level up when we aren't feeling it yet or we've had a big setback? On this podcast, I'll be talking to some of the most inspiring and courageous men and women on this planet who at their worst learned how to achieve success greater than they ever dreamed possible, leveling up and creating everything from nothing. Just 5 years ago, Lance and Brandy Salazar were nearly divorced. Having kids abruptly deprioritized their marriage, and they lacked deep intimacy and connection, the same way many couples will describe their marriage after a number of years. They were disconnected, frustrated, unhappy, playing the blame game, and they knew they weren't modeling the marriage that they wanted for their girls. At the point of calling it quits, they made one last effort to save their relationship. This time, they decided to try something new. The results were so effective that they applied the same method and principles to their family and brought their daughters along this journey with them. So in 2017, they quit their 20-year careers, sold their dream home, began homeschooling their daughters, and have dedicated their efforts to this mission, helping couples with children everywhere build the most amazing and flourishing relationship possible. Join in today and learn exactly how Lance and Brandy Salazar leveled up and created everything from nothing. Today on Leveling Up, I'm really looking forward to this discussion with Lance and Brandy. They are the founders, creators of Legendary Couples with Kids. And I'm really excited to get into a conversation with them today because very recently, especially with everything with COVID-19 and my gosh, the things going on in the world, so many shifts in the world. There's a lot of people struggling with relationships right now. And I really felt this heavy when I posted about me and my husband's anniversary. And I shared that we had not always been the perfect couple, that we had had struggles, that we almost divorced. And it was amazing how many questions I started getting about relationships. And I got sort of a giggle out of it because I am definitely, nor is my husband, not a relationship coach. So that made me want to dive in more and actually get some real resources for you, some real help. So thanks so much for being here today, Lance and Brandy.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Thanks, Natalie. Yeah. One of the things I love about, go ahead. You go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to comment. I think one of the things I loved about what you just said is that people started coming to you because you were sharing your struggles and your story, right? You know, Legendary Couples with Kids was born out of us just sharing our struggles and people going, us too, and can you help us? And we thought, well,
what'd you do?
We weren't coaches either. We're just two people that were almost divorced that did some work, and then we created a plan, and people wanted to
decided to be authentic about it. One of our biggest struggles was we were like on Facebook, you know, we look like we've got this beautiful life, beautiful children, beautiful house, careers, blah, blah, right? And everybody thinks we've got this perfect thing, and we are miserable. Each other.
Wow. That's so common too. In fact, I won't even mention, but most people will know who this is. There's a best-selling author right now, a very significant personality and speaker who is under a lot of heat right now because people thought she had this perfect relationship. And that's what everybody saw. And then now she's getting a divorce and people are attacking, which, you know, makes me sad for her because people are allowed to change and have that. But it's interesting how not sharing those struggles really triggered a lot of people. Like, hey, we thought you were perfect this whole time.
I think the struggle there is when you are giving advice and putting yourself in a position as an expert in a certain topic and not sharing the struggles as well as the successes. That's where I think the trigger came in for a lot of people because a lot of people have reached out to us about this topic.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Okay, so take us back because you all do have it together now and you're helping lots of people with this, but I know this was not who you always were. So take us back. First of all, how many kids do you have?
We have two girls, both kind of preteen, 12 and 9.
Okay, so how long have you been married now?
15. I had to add it up real fast. 15 years.
15 years, and how long have you been together? Total?
17.
So about 17.
Yeah, we were together 2 years. Yeah.
Okay. So take us through your relationship. Like when did you notice there was a breakdown? What was happening?
So our situation, here's what's interesting about it. It's incredibly common. We lived a honeymoon phase when we first got together. I mean, we were out wine tasting, traveling to Cabo, right? We both had wonderful careers, nice houses, you know, great cars, all the cool stuff, right? We loved our lives together. And, so the moment we had our first daughter, everything started to unravel. And, for us, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, I could go all the way back to like childhood trauma and baggage. But the most common thing that we see with couples and what was happening with us is that we were trying to not shift the pie of responsibility and things on our plate, especially me. And our marriage got deprioritized.
Yeah, I think a lot of what happens, especially for us and a lot of couples with regard to parenthood suddenly being sprung upon them, right? They think they've got it figured out. They think they have a plan, and any parent knows that you can throw all those plans right out the window. And so when a relationship first gets started, you have all of this, like what Brandy was explaining, the romance and the passion and doing whatever you want, whenever you want. And then suddenly, boom, parenthood. And now it's really, really focusing on finances, taking care of the baby, the marriage getting deprioritized, and you're thrust in this like, well, wait a second, what happened to the wine tasting? What happened to the traveling? What happened to doing whatever we wanted? And if you're not on the same page and you don't get it together in that piece, you start to split apart. And that's what happened. That's what happened.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Did you, when this was happening, when you were going through that phase of like, okay, things are changing, my marriage is not a priority, do you remember feeling sad about that, or were you indifferent about it? Did it just become normal? And the reason I ask that is a lot of people start normalizing it. Like, oh, this is just what happens. We're more like roommates. We're just friends.
He did. Yeah. Lance normalized it. I got angry.
Okay.
Yeah, I just have more of a fiery personality. I was very involved in personal growth at the time and in all the other areas, right? Like, the whole theory of, doubling down on a certain couple of areas in your life, and those are going really well and awesome. My marriage was never part of that, and it didn't need to be beforehand. And so for me, as I started to feel uncomfortable, I was very resentful about what was happening. And we had a lot of conversation about it. We had a lot of therapy about it. We didn't sit complacent. He definitely was like, what do you mean at first?
Yeah. And then we did a wonderful thing and had another child, right? Yeah. I mean, we just added.
Yeah, right in the middle of it all.
Yeah.
So stupid. I mean, we love her, but it really took us out. Yeah, that's
as you regret later saying that, right? Like, but we love you. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So that's common too, I would imagine. And I know that I hear that. So somebody gets in 3 kids, 4 kids, 5 kids, and then what happens is the kids are grown and out, and now they really have a problem because they lost so much, such a focus on their marriage. It became all about the kids.
Right. And so many people have said to us, well, didn't you want to stay together for the kids? And it was the opposite.
And we said, no, we were actually going to get separated for the kids. Because when we really looked at each other and that whole idea of, not representing our marriage, as authentic on social media and whatever else, is we felt like we were frauds in a lot of ways with that. And the thing that hit us was this the marriage? If we wanted everything for our kids and we really wanted them to have this fruitful and amazing life, and if relationships are really the cornerstone or the centerpiece of our lives, then they weren't getting a front row view of what marriage could really look like. And so we're like, we just be better off with other people, right? Then maybe they would actually get a better view of what a thriving marriage could look like, because we weren't living it.
We weren't in love. No. Yeah. And so our daughters, we all know how trauma imprints and all of that, not all of us, right? But we're very aware of the way that this works and continuing patterns. And so our daughters were getting a front row seat of a very mediocre relationship.
So how old were your kids when this was really at its peak of not being good?
4 and 6, 4 and 7.
4 and 7. Okay.
A little younger,
maybe
even.
A little younger.
Yeah,
6 and 3.
Natalie was 2, I think, when I asked for divorce. Yeah.
Okay. So can you, and I'm sorry to keep going back on this, but I want, because I know there's a lot of people listening in this struggle. I would love to hear from each of you, like what your daily thought pattern was at that time. Like, what were you angry? Were you sad? Were you trying to communicate with the other? Were you looking for somebody else? Like, what was the actual conversation you were having internally while you were at the worst of this?
I was depressed and I felt like a failure. Was really how I felt. I had really felt that I had lost a lot of myself. Like I didn't feel as though I was the same man that stepped into the marriage as I was as a dad. So I felt like a terrible dad. I didn't feel like a great husband. And because of those two things being what I identified myself with, I just felt like a terrible man. I just wasn't happy. And I felt like, well, you suck. You're failing. Your wife hates you. And those were the thoughts going through my mind. And what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
Wow.
And mine was really heavy on, here I go again, repeating the pattern of my family. And I can't do this. And I have to get out of this. And I have to show them different. And I was angry. I was angry at the fact that I felt at the time, which was a very skewed perspective, by the way. I felt at the time that I was working my ass off to better myself, improve my business and health and all of the things. And my husband was a bump on the log doing nothing. That was what the victim role that I had dropped into at the time. A lot of blame.
So I was just going to say, so it sounds like you had a lot of blame happening, like a lot of
huge.
Okay. You know,
I was the victim and he was the perpetrator.
So it's interesting. I made a post and I'm just going to read part of this when I did this on my anniversary with my husband. And I had mentioned that what didn't work for us when we were on the verge of divorce is I said, needing to be right, putting work before each other, forgetting what we loved about each other, blaming, talking to others about our blame, expecting the other to change, and wanting to quit when it got hard.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes to all of it.
You summed it up in your post. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And that is interesting because when I wrote that, I mean, that really, and I knew that because I remember journaling so much about it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that it's very common. And again, you know this better than me. I'm just from what I hear people I talk with, that those things are so common that people really start to normalize those. And they think, okay, this is just common. This is what happens when you get married. And then there's this part that just say, okay, we're just going to suck it up and deal with it. Or there's another part that ends it. Okay. So most suck it up and deal with it.
One of the first parts of our book, when we started researching, the demise of marriage and like what happens, is what we found out that 50% of marriages end in divorce and only 18% of people that stay together are actually happy.
What, 18% you said?
Yes.
Wow. That's a discouraging number.
It's really unfortunate. Yes, right. And so children are watching this. And that's the piece that I come to, with our clients every time. What are your children witnessing? So if you can't get it together with who you're with right now, separate, improve yourself, either get back into that relationship or find somebody else that you're more compatible with.
Okay. Before we get into what woke you up to changing and wanting to working, because I really want to get into that and to show people how to bridge that gap. Did either of you look for outside validation, like look for someone else or think of having an affair or like, because I know that's a heavy conversation too, where someone else gives you a compliment. Now you're like, maybe there's something else. Was that ever a conversation with either one of you?
No on the affair. However, I had a lot of external validation with my business, with speaking and, teaching. And yes, there were a lot of men in my world. And so is there a part of it that I was getting, validation and attention, right? That's probably the best word. Was I getting attention in other areas? Yes. Was I ever interested in an affair? No. No. You?
And I was so miserable with myself at the time that I wasn't about to try and find somebody
but as
else.
far as like filling my cup in other areas, I was drowning in my business. That was where I got, and it's attention. And so may it be, emotional affair. Potentially you could call it that, right? Because I was being emotionally fulfilled in other areas of my life that were not my marriage.
So let me ask you this, because I'm sure that you've encountered couples that did do that did have an affair.
Oh, very, yes. Yeah,
I've also heard that sometimes people having an affair it makes their marriage better for a while because it's almost, they stop being mad at their spouse. They get this fulfillment from someone else. And now they're not bothered as much.
And it's the makeup period. Yes.
Yeah. And that's what I'm curious about that. Why do you think that is? And obviously I can see a huge danger in that, but I'm curious from your perspective, what you think. I mean, there's whole websites to help people have an affair. It's crazy.
It's, I mean, we could go down the whole path of people who are proponents for open relationships, because there's also that sect of couples that, just have these open relationships.
And maybe that works for people.
I just don't know.
I don't know how that would work for me. There's no way it could work for me personally.
Well,
so I don't know.
For me either. No.
How can you give all of yourself to someone else when you're doing that with somebody else? For me, it's just not for me. I don't want to.
The other piece of this that it is a core value for us, right? Is our spirituality, and this is a spiritual, faith-based relationship that we have with each other, and so for us to go that deep and that vulnerable from a spiritual perspective, it really dilutes the water when I'm giving myself, right, in probably the most purest form capable of giving myself.
It's interesting because I actually have two friends that I learned that they are, am I saying this right, a polyamorous relationship?
Yep.
And my judgment came up right away, but the more I got to know them, I'm like, okay, I can accept that this is interesting and works for them. So I've worked on letting go of my judgment around it. Like, okay, that could work for some people. But I do in my gut feel strongly that if your goal is to have a happy marriage, like that's your thing, I think that's a very difficult thing. If your goal is just to fulfill something else, maybe that works. I don't know.
This is just my opinion of it. I think if you step into a relationship where that's an agreement from the very beginning or what have you, I think that perhaps you have a chance on that working for you. Okay. I just feel as though if you're seeking something else from someone else that you're not getting from your partner, then there's a challenge there. There's something to overcome. There's something to work on. There's something to grow. How do you grow with this person if you're with what you're missing?
Put a Band-Aid on it from outside.
Yes. So that's just
right. So if we're having a hard time fulfilling that intimacy bucket in our relationship, we need to level up. We need to have a conversation. And that's our belief, though. I mean, I don't know how much judgment I have of other people. I mean, it's one of those things that I've really tried to work through, right?
Sure.
Is
Me too.
Just judgment in general, right? And so I can't really put myself in those shoes because that's not a belief that works for my personality, for my soul, really.
Yeah.
Like this is a soul-based relationship that we've developed. Sure. I'm not willing to risk that.
And not to say too much on this particular topic, but I want to share that one of my friends that's in that type of relationship, what she said that did land for me was that she felt if her husband truly loves her and wants the best for her, then he has to love that about her too, that she wants that. And so when she said that, I got a glimpse of, okay, I got that maybe works for you guys. So that was how my thought.
We're all made different. That's the part that I always go back to is that we have all been created different, right? It was so many topics.
Sure.
And so we're not experts in this topic.
Yeah. Okay.
So and there are people that are,
Maybe that'll be another episode because I'm curious.
Yeah.
So tell me what woke you guys up to now wanting to, because you went from wanting a divorce, and I want to know, I have so many questions here, but like who asked for the divorce? Was it mutual? And then how did it go from that to let's work on this?
So it was not mutual. I was adamant about the divorce. I had started looking into divorce attorneys and separation and things like that on my own without him. Not that he didn't know that it was not in a good place, right? And I had asked him to move to our guest room and start looking for an apartment and things like that. And, honestly, the saving of our marriage has a very deep faith component because I believe that, or we both believe that, nothing happens by accident, right? And so randomly, I have a coffee date with a mentor of mine on this women's mastermind that we're creating. And, I sit down with her and she makes some comment about wanting it to be co-ed. And I'm like, nah, I'd rather it just be women. Like there's enough things out there that are co-ed, or there's enough things out there for men. Like, let's make this a, women's mastermind for leveling up, which is your podcast. So we're in this conversation and she's like, what's going on? Like, why are you so adamant about this? And I explained to her what's going on in our marriage and she just stops and she's like, we're not here to talk about, this mastermind. She's like, we're here to talk about something else. She said, I've had a couple of divorces myself, and I know your husband, and I'm telling you right now that you need to really think about what you're willing to trade.
Wow. I just got chills hearing that.
Yes. What are you willing to trade? Because no one is perfect and neither are you.
Wow.
And so your husband is going to attract a intense, badass woman just like you, because that's what he attracts. Mm-hmm. And so is that the person that you're willing to be in partnership with and raising your children?
Whoa.
And it was like, goes to this whole thing, right? So I have this, right? The organization that we were expanding is this men's mastermind called GoBundance. Mm-hmm. And the CEO at the time was a guy that I was working with. And he and I are having this conversation simultaneous, right in the same time. Mm-hmm. We have a conversation and I have this thought, and I'm like, because I needed a new coach. It was right at the beginning of the year. I needed a new coach at the time, and I really wanted somebody to kick my ass. And he was this really intense guy. You can look him up. His name's Rock Thomas. And so I'm like, Rock, I want you to coach me, man. Like I need your fire right now. Mm-hmm. And so Brock and I start coaching, and one of the first, we go through the whole life, right? What's going on here? What's going on here? What's going on here? I was like, well, my marriage sucks. And he was like, all right, tell me about that. And he was like, so what you're telling me is you want to be in a polarity, masculine, feminine relationship, but you are bulldozing your husband.
Whoa.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, shit.
I think we're the same person. That was exactly I understand that.
Yeah. He's like, you're emasculating your husband. You're bulldozing your husband. He's like, what you want, you're not being the participant that is required. Can
we dive a little deeper on that right there?
Yes.
Because this is actually such a triggering thing for some women that are strong. Mm-hmm. They don't understand. And it's funny because when I said what worked, and I want to read the other side of that post I talked about, when I said what worked, I just want to read this to you real quick.
This is so funny. You have a post on this.
Choosing love, patience, meaning our commitment, working on ourselves and taking personal responsibility, lots and lots of personal development, loving ourselves, listening, letting the unimportant things go, remembering our intentions, working through things, creating space to be with each other. And men, if you want a strong women to be safe, men, if you want a strong woman, be a safe place for her. Strong women need to feel safe and secure. Step into your masculine. Women, if you want a loving man, you must love yourself and be loving to them. Step into your feminine. You also know what that means. If you don't, please read up on that topic. I had so many questions about that. And I had some hate around that too. Like, this is, 2020. What do you mean be more girly? And that's not what that means. Can you, from you all, explain what that means?
Absolutely. This is still something that I have to be very intentional about. Okay. It is in my DNA. It is in my history to be a survivor, right? To check the boxes, get shit done, be a hustler. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard for me, unless I'm incredibly intentional, to transition into that softer, creative, loving, encouraging to my husband, right? Safe, sensual, sexy place. It's hard for me. It just is. And
me
so
too.
if I'm not intentional about it, if I don't stop and say, Brandy, pause, right now you're in badass mode, and badass mode doesn't serve your marriage. So you got to shift right now. Like for me, it's, breathing into myself and I have practices around it, but what started to happen is so my coach Rock at the time, he asked me, he said, well, how often are you directing and correcting your husband? And I was
like, my gosh. Yeah. The coaching and criticizing.
Well, I was a coach at the time, right? I'm a business coach. And so I'm like, well, I'm sure it's pretty often.
Yeah.
And he was like, let's go 2 weeks. Let's see. Let's go 2 weeks. And each time you stop, let's start over. And I was like,
wow.
Okay, well, I'm going to go home tonight from the office and I'm going to, like even the little things, grab the mustard,
Oh my gosh.
Grab all the things. No, we don't put the shoes on. No, grab her shoes. We have 2 little kids at the time. And so directing and correcting was like my number one thing. And so that shift alone, ladies.
Lance, from your perspective, can you speak into that too? Like, did you recognize that was happening? Or, because I know a lot of times, like my husband will say he almost leveled down. So the more I was coaching, criticizing, he would see himself leveling down and being less in that masculine to create that polarity. And that made him not happy.
Yes, I would say I would see that, but we were also talking about it. I think part of the story Brandy didn't tell was that she came home from, I think, that meeting with your mentor, and said, we're not going to get divorced right away. We're going to what we called putting the marriage on the shelf. So we took away the pressure that a lot of couples feel around the stuff around intimacy and the friendship. And, we need to fix this. We need to date each other. We need to connect. Yeah. We said, time out. We're going to spend, I think we gave ourselves like 90 days or something like that to work on ourselves. And so she started doing the things her coach was telling her to do, while I started seeking a coach as well and doing the things that I wanted to do to make myself be the man that I wanted to be. So stepping more into my masculine.
So we stayed separated, essentially.
Yeah, we stayed separated. Okay. What it essentially started to happen was that we started to actually like ourselves. I think not only did I notice these things in Brandy, but I also started to see that she was enjoying who she was, as well as I was enjoying who I was becoming. And so I think there was this moment where we're like, well, wait a second, we actually like each other again now. We actually like each other, but we can't go through the same pattern that we had before, because while our marriage was crumbling, it had its moments of good. It was like good and then suck, and then good and then suck. And I even remember sitting on the bed with her one time before she asked me for a divorce, where she was actually cuddling me and loving on me. And in my brain, Natalie, was, how long is this going to last? Because I know it's going to be crappy again.
Wow.
And I wanted to get out of that cycle. And so we looked at each other and said, we cannot go through these patterns again. So what are we going to do to cast a vision for this marriage so we can stay on this journey, this personal growth journey, that our own personal journey, but also combine this so that we can take the best of each other and create the marriage that we dreamed of.
We started over.
We just started over.
So would you, because there's definitely people listening where either the husband or the wife the person listening wants to do that. They're like, I hear what you're saying. I don't like the alternative. I want to work on this, but my spouse does not. What do you want to say to them? Because can they get their spouse to do it? Or what do you advise in that situation?
So, all we have is our story, right? What worked for us and what's worked for clients for us. Mm-hmm. And what worked for us was I had to throw down. I had to say, here's the line in the sand. We will not do this anymore. I need a divorce. And and then when I came back and said, if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. And it needs to be the best marriage that we can possibly create. Are you willing to do that? But honestly, Natalie, seriously, I don't know if he would have been there if he hadn't had that time of me. We were separated. Like he needed to feel, because here's the thing. When do we move in life? We move when we want more comfort, yes, or we're uncomfortable. And I had to make him really uncomfortable in order to move. And I'm not saying that it didn't take me also moving, right? Because what Rock did for me in coaching was expose trauma that I was trying to avoid. And part of what my hustler was, part of what my masculine tendencies were trying to not feel the reality of my life.
Oh my gosh, reality I can so relate to that.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's almost like, the addiction of being busy, right? That's like what I had. I didn't want to sit in my own shit is really what it was. And so it was staying busy, all these other things, right? And that's where that masculine really came in for me. So, the other thing is communication, right? So people will say, I have said X, Y, and Z. I have said before that I'm not happy. I have this and that and this and that. Well, there's a few things with communication. Number one is you're in a partnership, right? There's two people. You both probably have different communication styles, right? So you're talking at them the way that you like to be talked at. And so they're not actually hearing you. It's been turned off, right? And so that's a piece of it, communication, just basic communication skills. So trying different ways to communicate and being very, very clear, because a lot of times people are communicating in the heat of the moment. This is what I'm talking about. This is why this isn't working. Yep. I don't want to do this anymore. It's over, right? Those are the kind of conversations instead of stepping back, sitting within yourself, dropping into your heart and saying, how do I really feel and what do I really want? You know what? I feel alone. I feel like we are not moving in the direction that I want to move. And this is what I want. I want a relationship where we are thriving, where we are friends, we are partners, we are deep lovers, and our children are seeing what is possible, right? Very different conversation.
So focusing on the vision and the possibility versus what's wrong. So you had to shift with that.
It's okay to say how you feel. I think it's important to say how you feel, but a lot of times it's like the blame finger, right? All of that's going on, and it's happening in the heat of the moment instead of, like, think about this. When you're preparing for something that really matters, what do? You put time into it. Like, our daughter's just made comp soccer this last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a conversation with her last night. What does it look like now for you to prepare for the season? It's extra training, right? It's getting coaches. It's getting ready. It's preparing yourself. This is a very important conversation, and people are not putting the time into preparing the conversation that it deserves.
Yeah.
Another part of your comments or questions too, Natalie, about the personal growth or people wanting to work on something or work on themselves when the other partner isn't coming along, and how do you get them to? I get this question a lot from men. I participate in a dad's group where they're like, well, I'm doing all this stuff and now my wife doesn't want to do it. And I remember with Brandy, because she's been in personal growth for a long time, and I said, if your personal growth is all about you, then she's never going to come along. And that's what Brandy was. Her personal growth was all about herself. Right?
So interesting. Yeah.
So, like, for example, when I started mine, I started meditating, right? And the dude from Headspace, his name is Andy. And I'll always remember, like, the third time I meditated, he said, now remember who you're doing this for. And so although I'm growing myself, I've got to remember that I'm not the only one that needs to win. That what I'm doing is for Brandy, and it's for my kids, and it's for our whole family unit. So a lot of these guys, they go, okay, I'm personal growth, I'm growing, I'm becoming this awesome man, I'm reading all these books. I'm like, great. Yeah. How are you bringing your wife along? How are you really modeling this? Because right now she's probably looking at you as though you're leaving her behind. So if you don't model this in a way that shows that she wins too, then it's not going to work.
Honey. Yes.
That's
what
incredible. I did. Yeah.
That's what I was doing.
It's interesting. You and I have a lot of similarities, Brandy, but the way you manage yourself is the way my husband did. Interesting. So just for listeners that don't know my whole story, it was about 3 years ago that my husband, Brooks, he said to me after I had started some personal development, because he had given me an ultimatum to start it. I went in completely regret not wanting to be there, fighting it. But when I started that, he said to me one night, he said, I don't know that I want to be married to you anymore. And my first step in stepping into my feminine versus my masculine is my masculine wanted to say, all right, then get the F out. I'm done. And like pack up. I just didn't, as soon as he said that, it was like rejection. I'm done. I'm over you. I'm moving on. And I stopped myself from doing that and just listened and just decided that he can do what he needs to do, but I'm going to still love him. And I gave him the space, and he left for over a month. He drove across country, and I, instead of gossiping and, blaming and being hurt and being in victim mode or anything, I said, I'm going to use this time to work on myself and just love him. And was an example to me of stepping into my feminine, just creating that space to not control and criticize and just let him be and just love him. And that's
also healing. It's also healing. You went from, it's a trauma response for us to say, no, I'm just going to go then. Okay, sure, you do you, right? But instead what you said was, no, wait a minute. I'm going to look at this for a minute.
Yeah. And I don't know why I didn't figure out to do that, but I did it. And I'm glad.
Yeah. Well, because you really loved him.
Well, it was also my second husband. And what hit me was, do I want to do this again? Do I want to have another divorce? Yeah. So when you decided and you both were committed now, like, we want to work on this, we're going to do this.
Yes.
What were the steps that you started to take? And did you have setbacks?
Oh yeah, we still do.
We're still human, right? Yeah. I'm sure this week he's pissed me off at something. Right? Like, it's just life. But, I am a big whiteboarder.
You're a big what? What did you call it?
Whiteboarder. Yeah, okay, I like whiteboards. I like Post-its. Yeah. And so we sat down for one of the first things that we did before we got to this point, because this is a very pivotal point for us, but one of the first things we did was we started making time. Okay. We decided, so he's a health coach, and I'm a business coach, or I was. That's one of the things we did back then. And so, okay, so what do you do for your clients, right? You sit down,
Yeah.
you decide where you're going, right? Where are you going? What do? You got to give it time. You've got to check in. How's it going? You got to pivot, like all of these things, right? And so we sat down and we started there. Okay, what do we want? How do we want to feel? What do we want this relationship to look like? And so we started checking in every single day. Okay, so we made these commitments. How did it go? It was every night before bed. And this is actually how our book got created.
Okay.
The Miracle Morning for Couples.
What's the title of your book, by the way?
The Miracle Morning for Couples.
Okay, got it.
And so the Miracle Morning was one of the tools that both of us adopted when we were bettering ourselves right at the end of that year before we got back together. I met Hal Elrod, the original author. We were both speaking at an event, and we were both in the first two people at the, like before the event, you meet each other, right? We were the first two people there. I was like, hey, hi, nice to meet you, whatever. So anyway, I started reading his book. I started doing the Miracle Morning. And then Lance ended up going to his event because I couldn't make it. My sister was having a baby. And so Lance goes to his event, meets him, starts doing the Miracle Morning. And so it transformed us. I mean, really, just side note, for momentum and success, we really have these beautiful bookends in our life. We have our morning and we have our night. And what we do in the morning and what we do at night makes every bit of difference of what happens in the middle, right? And so we both started doing that. Well, part of our nighttime routine was this check-in process. Hey, how did I do? And there was no judgment. There was no shame. It was just like, you know what? This kind of made me feel off, or like this worked, this didn't work. Okay, cool. Let's try again tomorrow. And we really became students of our relationship and observers, right?
Yeah. We gave each other the safe space to mess up.
Yes.
To kind of guinea pig what we knew what we were doing before wasn't working, so we better try a bunch of other new things to see what sticks, right? And we also took small steps. I think a lot of people think, well, now we've got to pile on all of these commitments and habits and everything. It's like, no, take one thing at a time. So our little night routine, we had our morning routine separate. We did our night routine together, and it was just these little steps. Okay, now that we're good at this, so it's just like atomic habits, right? Then adding this, then adding this.
We started doing weekly date nights, and we were very intentional about our date nights. We just kept it simple. Like, we didn't put any pressure on intimacy, although that naturally started to happen. And we were like, okay, pause. We've fallen back in love. We're having a ton of fun together. What did we do? And we got a bunch of Post-its, and we had this big, huge glass wall in our
sliding glass door
in our dining room. And we just started putting Post-its up. And all of a sudden we saw this theme. We were like, wait a minute. We started by working on ourselves. We got our partnership in lockstep, like any business. We knew who was doing what the schedule was. There was no irritation happening, not a lot, right? Less irritation happening in the stuff that frustrates people with new children, young kids, and in businesses and all of that. We had a lot going on. And then we started becoming friends with each other.
I love
that. To know each other again. And then we became lovers. And that's how we developed the 4 elements, was literally with Post-its on that board.
So when you said Post-its, what was on these Post-its, and what did a date night look like? Was it like, were you doing unique original things? Did it just mean going to dinner? Like, what did it mean, and what was on the Post-its?
That's a great question because we actually have sort of themed dates. So Brandy, just to mention really quickly, we have these 4 relationship elements that were developed from us slapping these Post-its up on the sliding glass door of what we had been doing. And they are you, which is ourselves, right? Working on ourselves, you, partners, friends, and lovers.
In that order. That's how you work on your relationship. You build the foundation. If you don't have 2 happy, healthy, individual, confident people, it's really hard to be in a solid partnership. Think about that in business, right? If you have somebody as a business partner that's kind of meh, they're not a solid business partner, right? And then we have our partnership. And one of the things that we talk a lot with couples about is the partnership loop. This is where people get stuck. We get stuck in the business of our relationship because we're not running it like a business. We're fumbling through it, hoping that it gets better, hoping that we have more time.
How are the kids getting fed? How are they getting
soccer,
to school?
Right, and then it kind of weighs on one party over the other. And so that kind of stuff happens, right? And then once we have that going, then it's friendship. We get to know each other again, right? Deep knowing is what we say in friendship. And then lovers is the intimacy, flirting, and things like that. But for us, like on the Post-its, it was, what are we doing on our date nights? So our date nights, we literally just started pulling questions out of a hat and sitting with a glass of wine or a cup of tea on our back deck, watch the sunset, and just ask questions for each other.
These are our first date nights when we decided we wanted to stay together.
Yes.
Let's keep it simple.
All we did.
We can't jump into the heavy stuff right away.
Of how do we make our sex life better?
You're right. I mean, it's like, we're not there yet. Yeah. So we would pull simple questions out of that. Tell me about the most embarrassing moment of childhood.
Right. Your best friend as a kid.
Oh, wow. You know what's funny?
Really
that is legit what happens when you first meet somebody. You know, like when you first start dating, you're so inquisitive and like.
Or you just become friends with somebody. Think about when you're little. What's your favorite color? Yeah. What do you like to do?
You know, it's interesting because we do forget that. Like, you think about just even a cell phone. How many couples you'll go to dinner and you'll see like a couple on a date, but they're like so paying attention to their cell phone the whole time versus each other, you know? Or so I like that deep questioning because it's like, it's this whole other experience. And if I really think about it, like the pivotal times with me and Brooks, it was when we were just with each other without the cell phones and whatever, like literally looking in each other's eyes, having like deep conversations. And I even forget that. Like I forget that we
Or having fun. Or having fun. Like we forget as couples, especially when we have young children, that we were friends first. Like there was a courtship that happened. And so trying to find ways, and that's individual for every couple. Right? Some couples are like, let's go skydiving, right? And some couples are like, let's go wine tasting. Like, what is it that you enjoy together? Like having similar hobby of some sort that you guys can do together. And so now let's like fast forward real quick. You know, we consistently do 4 date nights a month, one-on-one with ourselves. Okay. A you date where self-care, like time alone. Sometimes I go take a bath. Sometimes it's like I need to just go out and sit at a coffee shop and journal or update my.
So is that like the other one takes on parent role that night and you go do what you need to do?
Yeah. Okay. And you flip or you hire a sitter. It depends on your financial needs, right?
So you time alone is one of the date nights a month.
4 date nights a month. The first one is time alone.
That's the
second one. Yep. The second one is let's sit down and talk about business. What are our goals for the month?
Okay.
What are our plans? Yeah, what do we need to get done? What's the schedule? Who's doing what? You have any big travel plans? Like
we'll even pull in the budget. We know that is the most unsexy thing to talk about on a date.
Yes.
But I will tell you.
I hate that.
It's uncomfortable, right? But that's where a lot of the growth happens in the relationship is when you actually tackle some of those really uncomfortable subjects. And I will tell you, I think Brandy and I have come out feeling more victorious and connected and like, high-fiving and loving on each other and some of those super uncomfortable partnership dates.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm like, my hands sweating thinking about that.
Make notes.
We haven't done that.
In the beginning, these are uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that would be really uncomfortable. I like to just not know and let him manage, but you're right. It's
That's me too. You and me both. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Or in the business, just hire an assistant to do it. Like,
I literally, that is definitely a gap with me. I do not pay attention or want to pay attention. But you know what? It's interesting. Now I'm curious, Brandy, do you find was that how it was with like your dad? Because like that's how it was with my dad. So I've repeated that pattern. Like he managed.
Oh my gosh. We could do a whole other podcast on my childhood. No, I don't even know. My dad was in prison.
Oh, wow. That's a whole other topic. Yeah. So what's interesting is when my dad did everything like that with my mom, she was a stay-home mom but when my dad died when he was just 49, that my mom was, only 47 and she had to, for the first time, pick all that up. So I've known in the back of my head how dangerous that is, but it's like, I think we do repeat patterns there.
We absolutely, or we repel them, right? It's either we repeat or we repel. Because if I was like my parents, I would be, in prison or an alcoholic or, whatever it may, drug addict, right? Whatever.
Yeah. We're going to have you on solo for that.
That's a whole other time. Yeah. But the truth is that what we just talked about right there, that is the root of the demise of my relationship. Why was I so driven by success at such a young age? Why did I have to have those external accolades to the level that I wanted them? Right? Because I wasn't good enough. Wow. I didn't have enough self-worth. I mean, it's really what it comes to.
I can see that. I've learned that's my pattern too. You know what? I'm wondering, I don't want to get too off track here, but I've noticed the more I've learned to step into my feminine and let go and like compartmentalize the masculine, like use it when I need to.
Yes.
The more I've done that, the less hard I work and focus, actually the better I do, which is so interesting. I never would have believed that before.
Same here. Yeah, it's like work smarter and not harder.
It's totally changed my perception about I don't work 12 hours a day ever anymore like I used to. sometimes I'm working like 3 hours a day and I do so much better. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a burnout. Yeah, it doesn't serve us. But I mean, sometimes like, having your month away from Brooks, like sometimes we have to get uncomfortable before we're able to make those transformations. Totally. And that's what it was for me as well. Like my coach at the time made me really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Okay. So you said I want to go back to these 4 date nights. So you got time alone, talk about business is a second. Then you still have a friendship one and a lovers one. So what's the friendship one?
Do something that you have fun.
Maybe it's something new even. Go someplace new or do something you both love together. Or
play a game.
Have fun.
Ask questions. Do something lighthearted. We are not talking about business and we are not putting pressure on intimacy. That does not mean that you can still have intimacy.
Okay.
Right? Doesn't mean that at all. Right. But the pressure isn't on that. That's not the intent of the date is to enjoy each other's company. No cell phones, no distractions.
Don't talk about the kids.
Right. Don't talk about the kids. Either get a sitter or train your kids to let you date.
I love this. Okay. I'm going to do all this with Brooks. He doesn't know yet, but this is going to happen.
The fourth one is like dating like when you first met.
Okay.
Right? It's flirting and courting and it's a nice dinner, intimacy, setting it up like you were courting each other from the very beginning.
I love that.
Right. With intimacy, you don't have to have intimacy, right? That's not in everybody's,
so
but that's.
If this is 4 times a month, so basically every week except for one in a month. I'm sorry. This is all in a week. You do these 4?
No. One date night a week.
Right. So, but one of those is time alone. So it's like, okay, got it. So there's really 3. So everyone can figure out a way to have 3 date nights because some of this can be done literally at your house. Like, so that's not an excuse. Like you can go sit outside and drink wine, or you could watch something funny, or like you could do these at home.
The product that we're launching right now is date your spouse without leaving the house.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
Literally, because that's what this happened for us before. So, I mean, this is a whole other subject. We quit our lives 3 years ago, sold everything, quit our jobs. I got rid of my business, all of the things, moved to a small farmhouse and homestead and homeschool our kids for the last 3 years.
Wow. Okay.
So as we made that shift, that's a whole other topic. Yeah. But as we made that big shift, we started being home more. And one of the things, so we've taken our children along on this journey as well.
That's so amazing.
They knew that our marriage wasn't doing well. Our older one especially could feel it. And when we sat down with them and said, Daddy and Mommy are working on our marriage and we want to stay married. This is what this is going to look like. One of the things we're going to do is a date night. And so sometimes we would do it when they went to bed. Sometimes they were home. And how do they do it now?
So
they will say things like, because
do you guys want to have a date night tonight?
We want to watch this movie together.
That's
Can you just get out of the house and go and hang out and have one of your date nights? So here's
the tip for that, Brett. This is like a pro tip.
Okay.
Save good things. If you have young kids, save the good things for date night. Save the new movie release. Save the new game. Save that thing for date night, because then you're like, oh my gosh, guess what you get on Thursday night? The new SpongeBob movie or whatever it is. I don't know what's in right now, but whatever it is. Give them extra if they play Roblox. Give them extra Roblox money. You guys get $20 tonight to go play Roblox, to go build whatever you want to build.
How old are your kids now?
12 and 9.
They'll be 12 and 9. Yeah,
okay. I have an almost 13-year-old. So, okay. Yeah. Got it. Okay. This is really good. So this is great. I love all this. A couple just rapid questions around this.
Yeah.
If somebody's listening right now and they are on the verge of a divorce, what do you want them to know right now? Or what do you want them to ask themselves?
Well, first I want them to know that there is hope, because at the time when I asked Lance for a divorce, in my mind, there was no other option. That was where we had to go. And we are so in love right now. And it stayed that way. I mean, we're on 6 years now of doing this thing, right, that we get to do now. And I wish that for everybody. So there is hope, number one. And number two, do not sit stagnant. Do something. You have to do something. And if that means that you have to sit down and have a really uncomfortable conversation or send an uncomfortable email, because sometimes conversation doesn't work. Or
seek help.
Yeah, seek help. Right. But we have a free guide on our on our website. It's called the Relationship Planning Guide. And I mean, it's like a mini course. We have video in there and a workbook. And it essentially walks you through all of the relationship elements so you can sit down and have a conversation to design, co-create shared vision for your relationship.
It's one of our favorite things. We actually still use it.
For each other, yes.
Wow. Okay. I got to check this out. What about the couple that they're not talking about divorce, but they've become the roommates or the friends? Yeah. Because that's very common. What do you want them to know?
Same. Yeah. Are you okay with the relationship that you have being modeled in your children? Is this the kind of relationship that you want for them? If yes, you're fine.
I think there's a lot of people that would say yes. That's what's so sad.
Really?
They don't even know what there is on the other side.
Well, I would ask them to take the opportunity or the time to dream of what it could look like, right? Yeah. Because for us, that's what when we decided, yes, we are going to stay together and we don't want to fall into these same patterns. So what are we going to do? We're going to dream of what this relationship could look like and have that conversation. And okay, great. So we want to do this and we want it to look like this. So what are the steps? Yeah. What are we going to commit to? And this is what the relationship planning guide kind of walks through is what are you going to commit to fulfill that vision? Where are you going to pivot? How are you going to check in? Right.
I want people to know as somebody who's been married twice, who's very close with my ex-husband now. Like we're good. We're all Modern Family, good friends, which is amazing. I'm friends with his wife. Like we all do Christmas together. Like we have a weird Modern Family now
awesome.
That we worked at. But what I want people to hear from me is the exact same things that almost broke up me and Brooks are the exact reasons I got a divorce the first time. So I believe that those patterns repeat itself if you don't fix it.
Amen.
The next spouse is not going to fix the problems. You think that it's going to, but unless you change and work on yourself, you will repeat even though my husband now and my ex-husband are completely different people, the same exact problems. If you were to ask my ex-husband, why did we divorce? He would say the exact same things that Brooks had an issue with.
Because you're still there.
Yeah. You're the common denominator, right? Yeah. I mean, that's what I told myself. Two of my what I call my guiding lights. I have three of them, but my two real important ones that I drive home with men a lot is I only have control of myself, right? So if anything's going to change here, I have to be in control of changing me. I can't change Brandy. And two, that I'm actually responsible for my own happiness. She is not responsible for making me happy. Can she support my happiness? Can she encourage that? Can she join in on it? Absolutely. But it is unfair for me to hold her responsible to that. And I think that happens to a lot of couples, right? They're like, well, you're not making me happy. You have to make yourself happy firim
Oh my gosh. My husband would say the exact same thing. He would say that the stuff that triggers him about me or that triggered him about me, until he fixed those things with him in himself, they kept triggering. Once he fixed them within himself, all of a sudden he wasn't triggered by that.
Bingo.
Yeah.
It's pulling the problem out at the root instead of putting a Band-Aid on it.
When do you recommend that people do get a divorce? Because I'm assuming there's some couples, there has to be some couple you've encountered that you wanted to.
Yeah. It's such a controversial topic. We are not against divorce. Mm-hmm. If you have a abusive relationship, if you have somebody that is unwilling to kick an addiction, if it's unhealthy for the children, it takes two to party. Like it took both of us. Like just because I work on myself does not mean that he's going to come along. And if that continued to be unhealthy for our kids, I would have had to leave.
It's an individualized decision, really.
Yeah,
I have a few guys that I work with or I talk to that, I find it very noble that they're willing to stick it out. Mm-hmm. But then I just ask them, I'm like, well, I'm glad that you're making yourself happy. And if you're okay with being unhappy with the marriage, then by all means, stick around, right? I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to tell them it's time to get a divorce. But I think we all come to that decision-making process or that impasse. It's all a choice, right? Do we want to figure out a way to make our relationship amazing? Or are we willing to stay with where it is now? Or do I want to go and find somebody else, now that I feel like I'm awesome, that can be awesome with me? I think it's all a matter of personal decision making.
So many circumstances that happen, there's so many. And
what's interesting is you didn't say affair. So it's interesting because I would think, so the non-negotiables, at least for me.
That's one that's personal. Like some couples can work through that.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a mistake that really took both parties to get there.
Totally. So if I'm hearing you correctly, sort of the reasons that might be non-negotiable that you're like done, it would be addiction. That if somebody's not willing to fix the addiction or get the help, because I'm sure there's the other side.
Right.
Abusive, someone's abusive to you or your children, or whether it's verbal
physically,
or physical.
Mentally, yes.
And then the other one you didn't mention, but I would imagine this would go along with not wanting to work on yourself, would be the narcissist. Like if you're married to a narcissist.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
Any experience around that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. I have narcissists in my family.
Yeah.
And it's toxic. You're on a hamster wheel you can't get off unless that person gets help. I believe that narcissism is an addiction.
Yeah.
It's an addiction to selfishness. It's an addiction to self-serving, right? Not seeing any other perspective. And so,
well, and you mentioned the infidelity or the affair piece, Natalie, too. And I think what it made me think of is really that, like, for me and Brandy, we have a set of shared values. And every couple's going to have their own set of shared values, or they should develop those values. And I think the decision-making process around whether or not you stick in the marriage or you separate or what have you is if those values are not being acted upon or they're not being adhered to, right? I think if there's constant, consistent, going against the values, I think then suddenly it's like, well, why are we here? And so I think it all depends on what those values are for people. So I don't think I would ever say that for us, an affair would very possibly be a non-negotiable.
It would probably end.
That would be a non-negotiable for me. I don't think
me too.
But those are your values. Those are our values. And it might not be exactly, there's couples that come from that.
And come out very well.
Wonderful. There's couples that coach on that specifically, right? Because they've gone through that. And I think that's a beautiful thing. It's not something we could do, but it's something they've been able to overcome.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it would be the end for us. But again, it's kind of like the conversation we started the whole podcast on. Everybody's different, right?
Sure.
Everybody's different. Everybody has different values. Everybody has different things that they can tolerate. And I do believe in change. I do.
I do too. I think there's just certain, like you just said, it's very unique and individual. I would say abuse, though, if anyone's listening, abuse is a very difficult thing to fix. So if you or your kids are in danger, I would say it's not necessarily getting relationship coaching. That is definitely getting a bigger help with that.
Right.
Well, this is super helpful. I need to know all the places that people can find you, work with you. And you mentioned this is great. I hope this was so helpful to people listening. I believe it is. This answered a lot of questions I've been getting, a lot, because again, I am not a relationship coach. But Lance and Brandy are. So how do you've got a book, talk to me about your social media, your programs. What are all the places that people can find you and work with you?
The best place is legendarycoupleswithkids.com.
Okay.
No, legendarycouples.com.
Legendary Couples. Okay.
.com. That's our website.
Okay.
And before the chaos of the world, we were very active on Instagram.
What's your Instagram
and
handle?
Legendary.couples, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And Legendary Couples on YouTube.
Got it.
You like our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel has a lot of great videos.
Yeah. That's actually the best place for people to go if they need support resources. We talk about our elements on there. We have a video on each individual element. We talk about the habits for your relationship. There's some really great stuff.
And then if people want to work directly with you, do you do small group coaching, individual coaching? How does that work?
Individual coaching right now.
Okay.
And I have a women's group that will open back up in fall for members.
Amazing.
The Mama Wives Tribe.
Yeah.
The wives.
And so right now it's one-on-one. We will do, we have done and we will do group stuff.
So
but
good.
Just not right now. Right now is a weird time and we're really preserving our energy.
Plus I would imagine you're living your work. So you've got to put the energy into your own relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And we homeschool our children.
Yeah.
Who do competitive soccer. Yeah.
You got a lot.
You got a lot, yeah.
Super helpful. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for having us.
I love the questions. A lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for leveling up with us today. Please share this episode if you found it helpful so others can join in. And don't forget to hit that subscribe so you don't miss out on future shows. And if you would leave me a 5-star review, I appreciate those so much. I read all of them, and it's how I know that I'm giving you information that you find valuable. And come interact with me over on Instagram at Natalie Jill Fit. I read all the direct messages and comments over there. Make it a great day, creating everything from nothing.